Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Reviving Claims Handling from Cost Center to Growth Catalyst Through Automation. Would like to start by saying a quick thank you to Reuters Events for putting together today's session, and a big thank you to all of you for joining. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chris Frankland, founder of InsurTech 360 and Global Head of Products and Innovation at CoverDesk. I'm a global thought leader and mentor to startups, and I've spent my entire career building products and solutions that leverage people, process, technology, and data to reimagine the insurance and customer experience. So lots to talk about today. We know that automation and building an automated claims handling process has a key role to play around redefining the claims experience. But what does that mean, and what exactly is next? How do we transform our systems from the inside out and maintain retention rates? By leveraging automation, we can optimize the claims journey. We can improve efficiency, reduce costs, and ultimately drive growth and profitability whilst maintaining a long-term customer relationship and making new ones. But how do we do that? How do we still deliver a compassionate customer experience that's rooted in empathy and compassion? For today's discussion, I'm joined by a wonderful group of innovative and creative thinkers from across the insurance ecosystem. So a huge thank you to Kathryn Turgeon, who's the head of Life Annuity Claims at MassMutual. We have Frawley, the VP of Claims at New York Life. Also joined by Althea Garvey, the VP and Chief Claims Officer at LifeCare Assurance. And last but not least, Kristin Warne, head of Life and Health Underwriting and Claims Innovation and Analytics at Swiss Re. So thank you to all of you for joining us today. Before we dive into the Q&A, and I would just say to the listeners, please submit your questions through the Q&A module. I would like to give all of you kind of the opportunity to introduce yourselves and maybe share your thoughts around today's topic. So Chris, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Kristin Warne. I am based in Hong Kong. I've been here for 7 years. My background is I have an undergrad in social science, major in psychology. I have postgrads in project management. At the moment, I'm studying at MIT doing an executive certificate in innovation and strategy. But the majority of my experience, and that's 20 plus years now, has been in claims and life insurance claims and across different markets. One of the things that I'm really interested in is really seeing the use of automation, but not to diminish the importance of the empathy element that people bring to that process. So claims is an incredibly important part of what we do. I've got to see that firsthand sort of growing up in the industry. And although automation is very much a co-pilot in this piece of work that we do, it certainly doesn't derail from the fact that we really do need people and we do need to have them involved in that process. So I'm really happy to be here and talking about this topic.
Fantastic. Cheers, Chris. I'll go anti-clockwise on here. Stephanie, welcome.
Hi, thank you guys for inviting me. So Stephanie Frawley, I've spent my whole entire career in life insurance at New York Life, and I've been in different parts of the organization, so it's given me a little broad perspective from where you're sitting. And I've been over the claims area for about 15 years right now. And, you know, automation is, it's out there, right? You know, everybody's talking about the Amazon effect and how do we keep up? And, you know, to Chris's point, it's not really just about like a people exercise. It's really like, you know, how can we spend the time on the things that matter the most and get rid of the things that are taking up a lot of our people's time that are just not adding value. They're just adding time. So, you know, you'll be hearing a lot about data, how we use data to help us with our decisioning. So I'm just looking forward to having a nice conversation with everybody, hearing what everybody's thinking about, what some of the challenges. I think we all face them, and you know, where to begin and how to continue the journey. So thanks for including me.
Brilliant. Cheers, Stephanie. Kathryn, hello.
Hi, I'm Kathryn Turgeon, and thank you for inviting me to this incredible event. I'm very excited to be here. So I am with MassMutual. I head up Life and Annuity Claims, and I have been with, similar to Stephanie, grew up in the insurance industry here at MassMutual, sitting across various departments, primarily in the operational space. I'm representing our claims organization of approximately 150 people, and we primarily service our individual sold products across life annuity and DI. So when I think about my, what brings me here and why this subject is so important, one thing I've learned about claims to be true is it's a very personal experience. So when we think about optimizing our technology, it's how do we build that technology around the empathy, because it is a very personal experience. And one thing I do know about the claims is it's like a fingerprint. Every claim is different because our customers are different. That's the people interaction. So we've invested a lot in our cultural journey, which definitely builds a lot and includes our people front of mind to really those closest to the customer to build that optimal experience, while using our technology to really create that balance of faster, more efficient, so it's the good digital experience balanced with the really personal experience based on how our customers want to interact with us. So I'm really interested in learning from my fellow colleagues, share some of our wins, successes, learnings, and look forward to hearing the rest of the conversation.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kathryn. I'm sure we'll dive into all of that very shortly. Althea, welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Hello, everyone. My name is Althea Garvey. I'm an attorney by background. I'm currently the Vice President and Chief Claims Officer of LifeCare Assurance Company, which is a full-service provider in the long-term care space. And I come from a long history of claims, starting first as a trial attorney, doing insurance defense work. And then I flipped on to the other side as a plaintiff's attorney for several years. And then I came in-house to insurance companies and worked for AIG for 15 years in their claims department, and then transitioned over to this chief claims officer role. So I hope that I look at claims with a 360-degree view, from the customer experience to where we also can end up in the event that the matter goes to trial. And so when I look at automation, we're very customer centric, but I also look at it with the eye towards what deterministic facts, if any, are being included in the automation process and or may be excluded in the automation process, and how that will affect all of the stakeholders along the adjudication process from the beginning to potential litigation. And so I'm looking very forward to hearing how our colleagues incorporate all of that in the claims adjudication process as well.
Brilliant. Althea, thank you for those comments. And obviously that's a key part of the claims conversation. So again, just a quick reminder to the audience, let's get your questions in, and we can start diving into those. And we do actually have a question coming through. I'll start diving into these Q&A questions coming through. I think there's a lot to talk about, and this one is actually maybe this is a good place to start in terms of a lessons learned experience. So what are some of the toughest lessons that you've all had to learn from implementing automation within your organizations? And I think that's quite a broad question, and Chris, we'll start with you on that one, and would love to get your thoughts.
I think we underestimate how difficult it is. And so from my point of view, we actually build, and we've spent a number of years building rules engines and also digital front ends now for end consumers. And what we underestimate is a few things. So one would be just the length of time that it takes to implement these things, the level of legacy systems that you have to account for, and then how do they integrate with one another. But probably the thing that I underestimated the most, and I was a little disappointed in myself, was just the reaction to change. And that although we might think that automation can be a really exciting thing and we want to take that on, there is also that level of resistance that we need to work through with people, so they have a level of comfort in what they're using, so they know how to use the tools, and they're also confident in the process as well. So they're probably a few of my stronger lessons learnt.
Brilliant, thanks, Chris. Stephanie, kind of moving over to you. Chris just mentioned, obviously, culture being a key part of this, and I think ultimately with automation and AI and machine learning, there's a lot of fear that perhaps comes from the topic of automation as well. So I mean, how do you kind of address perhaps some of those, and you know, what are your thoughts around some of those toughest lessons that you've perhaps faced?
Yeah, well, I was laughing a little bit to myself, Chris, when you started, because you know, we are continuing to embark on this journey, and the difficulty of the dive is definitely hard, really hard. And what we're finding is really a lot of strong communications, really speaking to the teams and trying to explain to them that we're not looking to automate every single thing we do here, right? We're a life insurance company. We pay claims, people invested in our company. We want to be there for the moments that matter. And, you know, what are those moments that matter? It's, you know, I think Kathryn was saying, like, it's each experience is a different experience, and we want to be able to personalize the experience. And, you know, as much of a robot could listen in and pull out keywords, it's really difficult with claims. Even, you know, for something as simple as just listening to our phone calls and gleaming from them, you know, we use a lot of empathetic words in our conversations. I'm sorry for your loss. Oh, that's horrible. You know, all bad, negative words that you kind of have to think like, oh, if we could use these tools, they would help us so much. But they're challenging. So we've really been spending a lot of time with the team and just saying, like, you know, do you really get satisfaction out of spending so much time in writing a letter, a correspondence that you have to follow up every 30 days with a client, with a beneficiary, saying we haven't received your requirements, and we have to, you know, put that in the mail, lick the stamp, put it on an envelope? You know, do you really want to spend your time doing that? Or would you rather spend your time, you know, helping a person, whether it's with bereavement support, listening to them more? So it is challenging. The legacy systems are real. I think we all struggle with them. You know, Life's been around for over 175 years. And that's great. We've been around for over 175 years, but it's also challenging because we've been here for 175 years. So the legacy system part is a challenging part, but we're picking away at it, you know, and I think that's really, you got to start somewhere, create a clear vision, and start working towards it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Stephanie. And I think we'll dive a little bit into the legacy side momentarily. But that's, you know, I think certainly that's a key challenge. So Kathryn, you know, it's not easy, right? I mean, you know, for me, I think about it being, it's almost part art and it's part science, right? You know, how do you leverage people and technology in a way that kind of maintains this compassionate and empathetic experience, but at the same time provides the opportunity to scale and perhaps do things quickly. So challenges, Kathryn, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so, you know, not to sound redundant, but very similar to what Chris and Stephanie were sharing. But when we think about, you know, when we're pulling our coalition together, our IT partners, our employees, are those closest to the customer, the one thing we've learned is really to pause as we're automating. Always keep in mind our customers, our advisors, our employees, and try our best to keep it simple. You know, we are also working around our legacy systems, and as we migrate and pull our systems together and use automation around that, we absolutely have to think about not creating bias in our automation. So meaning, you know, when we're looking at algorithms, make sure we're allowing for that personalized touch point. So to Stephanie's point, sometimes a customer may want to ask questions about their forms, ask questions about their options. They may just want to speak to somebody versus others. They really just want to interact online, submit, and get the payment. So it's really important that our technology allows for that capability to individualize the experience.
Mute there. Yeah, thanks, Kathryn. And I think that's a really good point in terms of, you know, making sure we have channels for customers to still engage, right? Because not all friction is bad, is it? I mean, you know, sometimes you want to kind of have those outlets and channels where people can still connect with a human and ask questions. And Althea, I mean, you know, bias obviously is a key part of the conversation going forwards. I think with, you know, the temptation with AI and perhaps automation in general is to move as quickly as possible, but you know, it's important that we keep an eye on those mitigating factors, right?
Absolutely. One of the challenges, not only with AI, but any automation, is to make sure that the customer experience is still felt as personal, that their emotions and their feelings are being heard, without making it so impersonal that you get to a quick response one way or the other, and they feel as if they're disassociated with the claims process. So there's a lot of wonderful automation out there that will help us get to an answer very quickly, but the key is to have it staged, right? Because we went from being a company that was completely in the office, and after COVID, everything had to be automated and everything was in a rush. So we ended up rushing through a lot of automation so that we can continue to have a good customer experience, but we ended up having to stage it. And so one of the things and the lessons that we learned was bringing in project managers so that we can stage every single process of the automation, having a feedback loop with the customers so that we can understand how it's impacting them. Also touching base with the claims adjusters to find out how automation is impacting them, because if your adjusters are feeling a ways and stressed, sometimes that will come out during the course of conversations with the policyholders. So it's really kind of keeping a temperature gauge with every stakeholder along the process to make sure that everyone is being heard and that everyone is feeling that the automation is being helpful to them along the process.
Yeah, I think that's a great point there. And kind of, you know, thinking about that, Althea, kind of continuing that train of thought around perhaps organizational change and getting buy-in from team leaders and so forth. Great question from Sven Bergstrom, who has mentioned a common theme that we've discussed today even is getting buy-in and perhaps behavior change. In that context, is the use of automation as a key communication phrase appropriate? Would a rebranding to something like intelligent process orchestration be more appropriate? At Cover Desk, I recently launched a research lab where we're focusing more on human-centered design as perhaps a way of thinking about how we use people and technology across the value chain. But is there a different way of looking at it rather than talking about automation as perhaps something that is more human and also technology centric? Kathryn, I'll throw that to you.
Oh, sure. The easy question. Well, so what's interesting about this is when we think about like some places where we've used robotics as part of our automation, the one thing to really bring the buy-in and engage our people is to get them involved in creating the name. making sure our robot is part of our metrics, is part of our measurements, and is seen. That it literally is one of our peers, right? It's interacts with the team, and we measure. We use our measurements, reporting, and analytics to assess the health of the business, including our robotics, to make sure it's doing what we asked it to do. Is it pulling its weight? We ask the same things when we're working with individuals. Are we all doing our part? And our robotics, we don't treat any differently. And giving them names has personalized it to a certain extent. And it has actually created, we've made some competition out of it, and it really gets everybody excited and engaged. And I often hear the names brought up, and I have to quickly remember, oh wait, that's this mechanical machine sitting over here. So it's been a journey, and people, when you ask the people closest to our customers to be involved, you're surprised at how engaging and how much buy-in you can achieve.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think engaging the organization as a whole, right, around the topic of technology and automation is key. So especially around kind of accepting and perhaps embracing automation going forwards. Stephanie, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I would say our message to our team isn't really automation. Like, automation is part of the process, and it's not the word we're hanging on. When we're sharing what our teams is, we're really sharing what our vision is, and our overall claims experience. What do we want it to be? Where are we now? Where do we want to be in the future? How can we get there? And what can we do to peel back what you're doing to get us to a future vision? And I think several people have said it is, you're never going to eliminate people wanting to call us, right? They're in a time of need. But some people might not want to call us, and that's fine too. So that's where, the channel of choice comes into play as to, whether somebody wants a fully digital experience, do they want a partial digital experience? Do they want a non-digital experience? They want to get a paper check in the mail. So I think we have to figure out, how can we do that? And automation is just a piece of what's going to get us there. It's not that we're automating claims all over, 100% of the times. We just really want to free up capacity so we could improve the experience and continue to improve the experience.
Yeah, no, I love that kind of sense of perhaps segmenting the claims journey into different buckets and maybe having different capabilities, right? Depending on the type of claim. Is it something straightforward? Is it something that's maybe more complex and requires more empathy as part of that conversation? Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
So for me, I mean, I was just sort of reflecting a little bit on the answers there, but for me, one of the things that I found most fascinating is really the behavior change around asking people involved in the process what they would actually like and how would these tools make their jobs better. And so there is the employee experience, and then there's also the consumer experience as well. And one of the things that I really have been quite astounded with and think that we need to explore more is this concept, and it's a term that's being used quite frequently in the IT area, is around co-pilots and what can technology do to help us with a better experience. So if you're an employee and you're enjoying your job and you're able to do things where hygiene factors are just taken care of, then you have a better experience with the end consumer. And I think that's to Stephanie's point. If someone wants to call you, that's something that you would welcome and you'd be able to engage and have a very empathetic conversation with an end consumer. If you're option, if you're just receiving phone calls after phone calls about people wanting to know a status update on where their claim is, and that's something that you could be offering via a digital channel or a portal, then there are different types of automation and digitization that can help both the consumer experience and the employee experience coupled together. So I really do think the elements of human-centered design, which you touched on before, but also design thinking, where we've got to really get to the root of asking individuals, both the employee and the consumer, what is it that would make the experience better for them? And I think coupling all of those, pieces of gold together.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, I think design thinking, obviously, being part of that journey, Chris, and I'm really glad you mentioned that. Althea, thinking about, people are still key to this, the claims journey. I was at an event, an underwriting innovation event in Europe not too long ago, and we talked about the concepts of the bionic underwriter, where you have people augmented by tools and technology, but part of me thinks perhaps even within the claims space that there's perhaps the same concept where we're building tools so people can work more effectively, but not essentially to replace them, but to help them. Is that the end goal here?
I think the end goal is to make sure that the customer has the type of experience that they expect from your entity. If they're going to a insure tech company where they're touting that everything is digitized and you'll have a very little customer interaction with someone, and that's the type of experience that they want, I think that there are entities that can provide that. But if you have a customer base that's very interested in having a one-to-one relationship with someone that's in your company, then you should have that option available as well. So I moved to incorporate all the statements that were made before. If you have a fully digitized experience, then I think that that's what the customer experience can experience, but then you should have different lanes for the different customers that you may have, because everyone's experience is not going to be the same. As we indicated before, a claim is a very personal experience to the individual and to the individual's family. And so you have to meet them where they are. And so instead of saying that there's one solution, you should have an array of solutions that would fit your customer base. And then I think that everyone will be satisfied. But I think automation and using all of the tools to help us get to a solution that will fit our customer base is the key.
Yeah, well said. I think, yeah, I completely agree with that. So thinking about, coming back to technology and we talked a little bit about, the challenges around legacy technology and platforms. And I spent three and a half years with the carrier on the architecture team, and, quite well versed with some of those challenges. But I mean, we're trying to move forward as quickly as we can, but obviously there are certain barriers and bottlenecks which prohibit that at times. How are perhaps each of you handling and addressing some of those challenges? Chris, I'll start with you this time.
So for us, the way in which we operate is sort of a little less around our systems, but more working with our clients. But the tools that we build are actually able to then sort of integrate with different types of systems. So we're trying to build them as readily, what's the word I'm looking for? Compatible. As we like, right? So you use the newer technology to be able to do your API links into those types of different legacy systems. But it is a real challenge, right? Because you also have to understand the employee experience, and they don't want to go into 3 or 4 different types of systems to do one type of activity or a chain of activities. So you really do have to have a level of integration, and that's something that we do push for. And sometimes on legacy systems, that's difficult to achieve.
Yeah, no, I agree. Stephanie, what are your, how are you guys perhaps tackling and addressing some of those challenges around legacy platforms and looking ahead? You might be muted.
Sorry. Yep. I just had to get myself off mute. So a couple different ways. We're trying to tackle things from different ends. One of the things that actually works really well with legacy systems are bots. I have to tell you, I was go away from me, this is never going to work type of thing. And they're actually built for legacy systems, and they're pretty cheap to implement and pretty quick to implement. I don't think it's a Band-Aid. It is a bit of a Band-Aid. It's not going to solve everything, but I think it will help you get through the next few years of taking away a very manually intensive thing and just giving it to a bot to finish off. They're really good with repetitive type things that you could feed to it. You know, some of the other things are, you know, a little bigger, right? How do you get into a real digital footprint? And I think everybody has spoken to this a little bit. You know, I think people want to maybe start by talking to us, but then they'll get more comfortable with the updates, the status updates. Like, I don't think they need to talk to us about their status updates, right? They mail a form in and a claim form, and like, do you want them calling? You know, people are afraid of snail mail. Did it get there? Like, so if we could send them just a communication, we've received your information, or we've processed your claim. I think people are used to getting that type of communication these days. They might not want to start it end to end, but I think the middle piece is a wealth of opportunity where we can reduce a lot of the status phone calls. Because what we found is it's not necessarily people care that a claim is going to take 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 7 days. They just want to know that you have their information and you have everything you need to make a decision. And keep them updated. So I think that's a big thing. And we've been spending a lot of time with, you know, the opt-ins that people need to have digital communications. What are those opt-ins and what can we communicate digitally? And I think that's where, you know, that's where the times are moving to. I think everybody's used to it, right? You pay your credit card bill, you get a notification, your bill's been paid. You get a notification, your bill is ready. So I think people are comfortable with it. So it's a matter of what we can do with it as an insurance industry. Yeah,
no, I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, it's, you know, being primarily on the technology side of things, you know, it's, I think sometimes we try to solve everything, and we try to find a solution that perhaps fits or we try to find a problem that fits the technology, whereas, you know, so much of what we can do is fairly, you know, fairly small lift at times, especially when we have robotic process automation. We have tools that can help us achieve things quite quickly that ultimately make a huge difference to you know, to the customer journey, right? And Kathryn, I mean, well, you know, where did you guys start perhaps, and you know, how perhaps are you using technology to get around some of those immediate barriers from legacy platforms?
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, and the one thing I think we all struggle with is the pace of change and speed with our technology, even the new technology, you know, it's ever changing. So when I think about our legacy platforms, that's where some of the consolidation and migrations to technology that is more agile with plug and play, so to speak. So we also have a lot of very quick wins with robotics. And you know, what we strive to do is with the technology is create that overlay that hides all the spaghetti, so to speak. And that's what we strive to do. And this is similar. We want to, whether it's our robotics or some type of other technology that allows the folks to tell us what they prefer, then we can use the automation for that speed and efficiency and behind the scenes, freeing up the capacity that allows our folks to have the conversation, right? So if someone just really wants a person because that's their need, we're not having to rely on old outdated platforms, we're getting notified through some of our robotics and able to pick things up quickly and see where the need is.
Yeah. Totally agree. Althea, I mean, I think this is a perspective I would love to get from you, because you think about the claims journey and even post-claim, right? I mean, it's an incredibly emotional experience, and I think the frictions that perhaps we put in the way can be very challenging to people who are going through a claim that perhaps is impacting their life, right? And I think from a litigation point of view, the more we can do to create transparency and just make it kind of an honest and fair experience, perhaps will have a knock-on effect with the rest of that journey, and perhaps post-claim as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think the one thing that the policyholder is entitled to is transparency in the entire process, from the beginning to the end. Sometimes they may not understand the nuances that the business has to do, but they should be apprised as much as we can in terms of their process, and that we're doing the right thing in order to get to the right results on behalf of all stakeholders involved. So I'm a big proponent of being transparent and keeping people involved in the process.
Yeah, agree. So Althea, another question. I'll start with you as well on this one. Thinking about the claim experience, as it were. Have you noticed any trends, perhaps, as a result of automation? I mean, are you seeing kind of a decrease in complaints? Are there more positive interactions with the policyholder, or is there still a lot more that we need to do, obviously, to elevate that?
It's a mixed bag, depending on the line of business that you're in. We're in long-term care, which is healthcare, and customer-centric experience is number one. Trying to get to the answer as soon as possible, keeping people in the loop the entire time. But we find that some policyholders, instead of getting an email, or they want to have a conversation, right?
Yeah.
So to some people, automation may not feel the same as the personal touch with someone who's in your claims department. And then there are other people who are way more tech savvy, who want to have little interaction. They just want to get to the answer and then move on. So we've had to incorporate a lot of different options for folks. Portals for people who are interested in using portals, customer service representatives for people who want to have a conversation, a quick conversation. Did you receive my documentation? Did my check go out? Claims adjusters available to people who want to have a deeper dive to find out about the status of their case and where they are, and having all of those options available to the customer base tends to bring about, for us, at least, a better customer experience.
Thank you. Yeah. Kathryn, the same question. I mean, are you seeing any trends, perhaps, as a result of automation?
Yeah, so the most common cause of any follow-up phone calls that we receive are in the vein of wanting information. They want to know, did you get my claim? Did you send my letter? Did you send my check? Right. So there's two things that we've done to counter that. So this comes back to integrating the personal experience with the technology experience, the digital. So along with creating automated letters, status updates, we've also, from a people side, stood up best practices where from right up at the initial beginning of the claim, after a letter automatically went out to them, giving them the forms in the letter, we follow a set of guidelines, which is make an initial phone call, introduce ourselves, offer our condolences, and set the stage, let them know what to expect, who they are in case they need to talk to someone. And so by the automation path, which is acting on what they're telling them what to expect, they're not telling them how. The person they're speaking with doesn't know all the behind the scenes things it takes to get the work done, but they're setting the stage, letting them know what's going to happen from beginning to end and when to expect the, what to expect. That we have seen a significant reduction in follow-up calls, to the extent that we do what we say we're going to do. And 9 out of 10 times we do. It's definitely been a very unique and beneficial balance.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I think, Chris, you mentioned earlier, kind of touched upon design thinking, and kind of, I think technology and automation has perhaps created the opportunity to rethink how we've typically done things, and perhaps through this lens of design thinking and human-centered design, right? We can tackle some of those challenges. Are you seeing a similar trend as Kathryn in terms of the impact of automation?
Yeah, so from what I've seen, I mean, even globally, is just trying to replace different types of manual processes and hopefully in a better way. So some of the things that we have seen, and this is sort of being addressed now with the sort of the different wave of technology coming through, is not just trying to make the same process digital or automated. And it's going right back to, and they're the design elements and the human-centered elements, is what actually could we do to change the process? So is there something that technology could do to help take or eliminate some of the unnecessary steps, or to ask information in a more targeted or more personalized way, depending on some of the answers that were previously given? So it's about not just replicating what's previously done, maybe in a paper format, but taking it that one step further. So the automation is not just about process automation, but it's also about making sure that we're getting that experience much more tailored to the individual, and therefore, one, a better outcome, but two, you get the information that you actually need, and you don't have piecemeal type interactions thereafter. So you don't have the ongoing work that's also generated from a bad process or a process that wasn't tailored to an individual. So there's some of the things that we've started to see really take shape over the last couple of years, because previously it was all around, okay, let's just take exactly what we've done and make it digital, and then we move from there, and that's part of the first step of automation. But now we're starting to get more sophisticated with what we're actually doing and making sure that the process is actually more appropriate and more tailored to individual claimants and customers.
Yeah, that's a great point. Stephanie, thinking about the kind of the steps perhaps before automating a process, right? I mean, we don't want to automate something that's perhaps broken or inefficient to begin with. A couple of questions there then. I mean, what impact are you seeing perhaps from automation, and is there anything you can share around how you look at and think about a workflow or process before you automate it?
Yeah, so some of the things, it's really time. It frees up capacity from the team. I go back and I use correspondence as a good example of, we were pretty labor intensive, and the amount of correspondence our systems produced for us and what we needed to fine tune, whether you're dealing with a minor beneficiary or an adverse claim. So, we'd have a lot of letters that we'd work with, but then our reps would have to spend a lot of time fine tuning different letters. And then we had letters that worked perfectly for us. So, we started with our biggest pain point, which was correspondence, and we started picking away at that. And it's been very insightful, and it's freed up capacity to allow a better experience for people. And, the other thing we're really spending a lot of time that, I think we're good as a company. We look at our mortality experience. We understand it really well, right? But are we really looking at the individual claims experience? We're an old company. We have people who've been around for 50 years, 60 years. So you're paying a $5,000 claim on a 90-year-old person. How much scrutiny do you want a person to go through to process their claim, right? So, what can we do to look at our whole population and see, like, where are we being a little too, a little too much of a dot the I's and cross the T's, and where can we pull back some levers, and what technology is out there that we can leverage to help our clients. So we're spending the time where we need it the most. So it's an ongoing process. We're continuing to learn from it. But I will say we are spending a lot of time, learning what our data is telling us, and it's been insightful, and leveraging groups like this to understand what is everybody's challenges and how they're coming across it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So, thinking about, we've had a couple of questions asking perhaps about the legal implications of automation, and perhaps how do we ensure that that an automated process is still in compliance with the applicable regulatory requirements in each of those jurisdictions. Althea, I'll start with you. Obviously, that's the more we automate, and not just thinking about robotic process automation, but perhaps intelligent automation, and thinking about the future. How do we ensure that we are still kind of within those compliance, meeting compliance effectively?
Oh, my passion project.
I'm glad we got this in.
It really is. It's knowing your workflow to determine what your salient points are in your adjudication process and your compliance metrics, and making sure that every piece of automation that you look towards hits those mile markers. So you're looking to include everything that's deterministic in your adjudication process, in your compliance review, in your legal review. And so when you start looking at automation, I highly suggest including the compliance department and including the department for review. Of course, claim starts with what facts do we need? What's our deterministic facts in order to get to a place where it's a comprehensive decision? But before you say go or go live, having the compliance department and legal department review it to make sure that everything comports to each one of the Department of Insurance, and it's a nationwide program, because you don't want to get surprised at the last moment. If something is automated out that you need, include it in the beginning. So that's what I spend a lot of time doing.
Yeah, no, thanks, Althea. And obviously that's, Kathryn, I'll throw it to you as well. But I mean, as we automate and build, governance is key, right? Making sure that things are done correctly and appropriately. If a letter is supposed to go out on a certain date, making sure those things are still executed correctly. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, Althea's spot on. It seems like every state has a different rule, right? That much I know is true, especially when we're sending letters. But when you think about, as we've transformed our journey, we have a culture of continuous improvement where we're always asking why, and trying to think outside of the box, challenge the status quo. With that said, we have a set guidelines of the adjudication process for a reason. There's statutes and regulations that we have to follow. So anytime we are seeking automation or wanting to make that change and have automation help augment our legal partners, our compliance partners, our fraud partners, they're always at the table, front and center, to help keep us out of the courtroom, so to speak. So it's really a very strong partnership. And Althea, I think you'll like this one. We have our legal team come to some of our team huddles. We call them legal takeovers, where we just have dialogue. And it is around, we don't specifically call out technology, but it's part of the process, right? And so we talk about things that we need to be aware of, and when we're making changes, and creating the speed and the efficiency to make sure we're not unintentionally breaking a rule that we didn't think of down the stream. So just like our IT partners, all of them up front before we implement, getting feedback is essential.
Yeah, no, that's. I mean, I love to hear that legal are involved in your huddles, and I think that's a fantastic step forwards. Stephanie, we talked in the kind of the pre-webinar call about the Amazon experience, perhaps as it were, and trying to get to that point where we can deliver an experience which is perhaps not frictionless, but it is personalized in a way that meets the customer needs, but at the same time we are trying to balance that, right, with doing things correctly and making sure regulatory pieces are part of that conversation and puzzle. How do we do that? How do we balance those two goals?
Yeah, so I mean, everybody knows the regulatory aspect is challenging, but I think on some of our automation, I think when we start diving bigger into a digital experience, that's really where it's a little bit unknown in the regulatory environment as to, can I email communicate with people versus snail mail communicate with people? What are the opt-ins? And I think, a lot of people said it, having compliance at the table, legal at the table. And the other big partner that Kathryn just mentioned is just having IT at the table. Is it possible? How do we need to get there? So I do think we could overcome the legal aspects of it. There's lots of disclosures out there and opt-ins out there. But, the Amazon experience is real, right? People want immediate gratification, immediate satisfaction. So it's not easy. But I do think if we could be as transparent as possible, and like some of the automation is behind the scenes. So a client doesn't even know it's automated. They don't know who's typing a letter. Is it a bot typing a letter, or is it a person typing a letter? So, I think it's that pieces are things that are moving ahead pretty quickly. But to do a real straight through type processing of automation, auto adjudication, I think that's really in the life insurance world, a space where it's a little newer, right? It's a little more common in a P&C world, where you could do a straight through automation. And again, a lot is going to depend on how good our data is, on that we could validate the people coming through an automated path or who they say they are. And, what tools are out there to validate that information. So, I think it's going to be a big channel of choice, but I think, and the other big thing that we have is we have a big agent force. We have, so including our agents in the experience has been critical, and something that as we're building out our future claims experiences, how can we leverage our financial advisors better? We get so much information over the phone from the people who call us. How can we get it to our financial advisors to help people make good decisions? So there's a lot, so there's the agents, there's the compliance, there's the even underwriting, there's a lot of people at the table to keep socialized and bring in, because the last thing you wanted to do is invest all this money and you find out you can't do it because of, A or B or C.
Yeah. There is a lot. I mean, I think that's a good way of putting it. I mean, you just kind of highlighted probably half a dozen different parties involved, who all need to be part of this conversation, right, going forwards for it to be successful. Chris, as somebody who has been working around automation for a while, I mean, how do we do this effectively? How do we kind of provide a level of governance, but at the same time move forwards and get to that kind of end state that we're looking for?
curiously cautious. I think for us, I mean, you start to look at some of the newer technology that's come out, and there's a great deal of buzz around this, right? But I know for our organization, there has been for us, we've looked at setting up task force, looking at specific use cases, whether or not those use cases would actually be valuable for that piece of technology, et cetera, as it comes out. So I think it goes to your point that you were making previously. A new piece of technology isn't a new hammer and you hit every nail on the head with it. You have to make sure that it's valuable for the process that you're trying to change or for the product that you're trying to enhance in some way. And so I think when we are looking at trying to do this in a way that's also consistent with regulatory requirements, you need to look at, well, what's actually happening? Do we have the level of transparency? Are we able to say how things are operating? Is it a black box? Do we have all of these pieces that would make us feel comfortable that if this were our claim, would we like how it's being handled? And that's the empathetic piece, right? So when I say being curious, absolutely curious around the technology that's out there, how can we use it? But also cautious around, there are humans at the end of this process. This is it's often a very traumatic experience for people. Make sure that we're doing it as appropriate as possible and make sure that we're using the technology for the greater good of these processes and for people who are also receiving these benefits.
Yeah, thank you. And it comes back to compassion, I think, and empathy, ultimately, right, for the customer. One more quick question before we wrap up. And thinking about, I won't bring out the crystal ball or ask you to predict the future, but I do want to kind of get your thoughts around perhaps the future of talent and what automation means for people coming into the workforce, right? Younger people who are retired and perhaps want to maybe re-enter the workforce and get into the insurance space. What does this mean? Is it an opportunity to engage people more effectively around training and just the industry as a whole, or what does that look like? Althea, I'll start with you this time.
I think it's a really great question because we have people of all different age ranges in our company as well, right? New employees and people who've been there, as someone indicated, people who have been in the company for 40, 50 years, all engaging in technology, but it is the wave of the future. And it's really being driven by the customer expectation, right? And so we're moving at the scale of the customer expectation, or trying to move to the speed of the customer expectation by bringing in the kind of technology that they expect to experience in the insurance carrier and trying to balance the outside world with the inside world and getting people trained so that we're all at the same place at the same time in short order is the hope.
Thank you. Challenge. It's a challenge, but I think we can meet it. Kathryn, any last thoughts there?
Yeah, no, when I think about the customers' wants and needs, our competition is the Amazons, right? The Googles, the Apple. So when we think about people onboarding, and the same here, we have all levels of tenure. And one thing, I would think onboarding is easier instead of focusing on the legacy systems and all the many subsystems that go with that. The automation is really allowing our training to focus on their interaction with the customer, helping them to understand how the technology is working behind the scenes. If somebody's stuck somewhere, we can help, but it's really the people connection that we're focusing, the empathy, the advocacy customers, and that's our advisors and our policyholders. So I in some ways, even though technology, sometimes seems like a scary word, we're creating the capacity to allow people to focus where our customers need them to focus.
Brilliant. Well said. Stephanie, a couple of minutes. Any closing thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I totally align with Kathryn. I think it's an opportunity to bring talent in. I don't, it's a hard thing. You bring you bring in somebody new and you show them these green screens and they're like, what is that? Like, like, really, that's what we're working in. So I think as you modernize and you're able to, I think Chris even said it, like having multiple screens up to answer a simple transaction, making, one-stop shopping for our representatives to help people. Really simplifies the training process, gets them to be, where we want them to spend the time. We really don't want them to spend the time learning how to tab, PF3, enter, next. We want them to spend the time with the clients and our beneficiaries and our agents. So, and eliminate, all of those green screens that we are so 1985.
Green screens, the dreaded green screens. Oh, Chris, last minute thoughts.
I was just going to say some of our greatest advocates for use of technology are people that have been in the industry for a very long time. And my closing remark is that you don't have to be an expert in technology to want to have an open mindset and know how to embrace it and bring your strengths to the process, because that tacit knowledge is really the thing that we want to be able to replicate in a way that allows other people to, one, learn from it, and two, also to free other people up to have those empathetic conversations with claimants as well. So I think, that's something that I found really incredibly rewarding, is that seeing the change of people that have been doing these types of roles for a very long time and learning new skills as we go.
Fantastic. I think that's a wonderful way to wrap up. Thank you to all of you for your contributions and discussions. It's a great topic, and I think I think we'll continue this discussion at a later date. There's the Connected Claims USA 2023 event coming up in Austin, September the 26th and the 27th, I believe. So make sure you all get registered for that, and I'll see you in Austin. But again, thank you to my panelists. That was such a great discussion, and thank you to everybody for tuning in. Have a great day. Cheers.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.